Hey, what's going on, fam? I've been thinking a lot about provision lately, um, mainly about what providing truly does to identity, what providing does to pressure, and what providing can do to self worth. And I want to talk about that today. So, anyway, for those of you who don't know me, this is Will. Welcome to Practical Moments with Will. This is where I like to talk about real life, real faith, and I like to do it with no filter. So let's just get right into it, okay? So, as I said before, I've been thinking a lot about provision lately, and I'm sure that I'm not alone. Probably some of you are also. Sometimes it's at the forefront of all of our minds, and I'm not thinking about it in a spreadsheet kind of way, you know. I'm not thinking about it in a, like a 5 ways to make more money kind of thing that you hear so much on the internet. I'm really m- thinking about like more about what it does to your head kind of way, and I guess that's the best way I can explain it. I want to make this practical. What is um, provision doing to your head? I guess if I was, maybe I should title it something like that. I don't know. But anyway, nobody really talks about that part. And it really does. It can mess with your head. Um, so let's deal with the facts. Providing really does sound like a noble thing to do. When you think about providing, you think about that, you think about strong, you think about, responsible. You think about all kinds of things, but you know, if we're honest, it can quietly start to mess with your identity. And at some point, especially if you're carrying responsibility, providing stops being about something that you do and it starts becoming more about who you are. And to be honest, that's when the pressure sneaks in. I felt it. Maybe you felt it. Um, I think we've all felt it. And you slowly stop asking yourself, "Am I okay?" And you start asking yourself questions like, am I enough, or am I doing enough? Is it enough income coming in? Am I making enough progress? And to be honest, the wild thing is that nobody has to say this out loud. Even if you don't speak about it, you feel it anyway. Okay. So I guess my point is there's like this invisible scorecard, if you would, running in the background. You're asking yourself, are the bills paid? Okay, good. Check. Okay. Is my family okay? Okay, good. Check. And then you start to feel like you're allowed to breathe just a little bit. But the moment something starts to wobble, whether it be your work, it be your money, it be timing, energy, your nervous system starts to like slowly go, hey, we might be failing a little bit. And I'm speaking from experience because I've experienced this a lot in my life. So even when nothing's actually on fire, that part can really wear a person down. Okay. Because you can be doing 100 things right and still feel like you're one bad month away from not being okay. Now, I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. You know, everything seems to be going right. But in the back of my mind, every now and then I start to worry like, what if something goes wrong? I'm just one decision away from a disaster. Okay. So over time, you start tying your worth to your output. You start tying your peace to your performance. You start tying your confidence to how consistent you can be. And then rest starts to feel like you're being irresponsible. Like, I relax after I handle this. Hello, somebody. That definitely was me at one time. And I sometimes I fall back into that. Except there's always going to be another this or another that. And here's something else that I've noticed, at least myself. When provision becomes identity, gratitude starts to turn into pressure. Hello, anybody know what I'm talking about? You don't feel free to say I'm tired, even though it's the truth, because what you start to realize is that people are dependent on you, and you don't feel free enough to say I'm struggling, because you're supposed to be the stable one. At least that's what you're thinking in your mind. So what you do, you just keep going, like the Energizer Bunny. But from the outside, it looks like it's strength. But from the inside, it feels like holding your breath for years. And I know from being a man, many men go through this and they don't say anything about that. And I'm sure that that's not just a male dominated thing, it's a human thing. So here's the uncomfortable part. Providing doesn't just shape your bank account, it really shapes how you see yourself. And if you're not careful, you may start to believe this lie. As long as I'm useful, I'm valuable. And to be honest, a lot of people think like that. And that's dangerous, my friends. Because what happens when you slow down, or what happens when you start to pivot, or what happens when you hit a season where things just aren't clicking the right way? The question is, do you lose your value in them seasons, or um, did you just lose momentum? And it's a big difference between that, because those aren't the same thing. Value and momentum are not the same thing. But pressure doesn't know the difference, and I don't have a clean solution for this. I'm still kind of thinking through this myself. But I do know this, okay? Provision was never meant to replace identity, or replace presence, or replace your worth. And carrying responsibility doesn't mean you only matter when you're producing, okay? So I guess what I'm saying is that if this hits close to home today, I want you to hear this clearly, okay? Your value didn't come from what you provide, and it doesn't come from what you provide. And it doesn't disappear when things start to feel heavy in your life. This pressure is not proof that you're failing. In fact, it's usually proof that you've been carrying weight for far too long by yourself. And you don't need to fix everything in this season, my friend, okay? You really don't. And you don't need to fix everything today, okay? Sometimes the most faithful thing that you can do is to stop measuring your worth by your output. Let yourself just slowly breathe again. Let yourself live again, okay? And I want to tell you, just in case you don't know, that is not weakness. That's really how people stay whole. Anyway, that was on my mind. I figured I'd get on here for a quick 10 minutes, and that's all I really have for you today. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me, Practical Moments with Will. I'm going to try to do these a little bit often. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.